Most Americans probably do not think much about Armenia's parliamentary election, and that is understandable. Armenia is a small country in the South Caucasus, with fewer than 3 million people, no access to the sea, and a long history of being squeezed between bigger powers. But this election is not only about Armenia, it is about Russia's declining influence. It is about America's strategy in Eurasia. It is about whether the South Caucasus becomes a bridge between Europe, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Central Asia, or remains a frozen battlefield of old empires. On June 7th, Armenians are not simply choosing a government. They are choosing between two futures. One future leads toward peace with Azerbaijan, open borders with Turkey, closer ties with the United States and Europe, and a gradual escape from Russia's shadow. The other future leads back to the old formula: Russian protection, fear of Turkey, hostility toward Azerbaijan, and politics built around loss and revenge. That is why this small election matters far beyond Armenia. It may decide whether Russia keeps its last real foothold in the South Caucasus, or whether the United States helps reshape the region without firing a single shot. To understand this election, we need to understand Armenia's geography. Armenia is landlocked. Its borders with Turkey and Azerbaijan have been closed for decades. Its economy has depended heavily on Russia. Its security system was built around Russian military guarantees. For many years, Armenian leaders believed that Russia was the only power capable of protecting Armenia from Turkey and Azerbaijan. But after the wars of 2020 and 2023, that belief was badly shaken. Azerbaijan won. Armenia lost control over Nagorno-Karabakh, and Russia, despite being Armenia's formal ally, did not save Armenia from defeat. This created a historic psychological break. Many Armenians began asking a painful question. What if Russia was not Armenia's protector? What if Russia was Armenia's dependency? That question is at the center of this election. The central figure is Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. He came to power after Armenia's Velvet Revolution in 2018. Back then, he was seen as a democratic reformer, a street politician, a man who challenged the old post-Soviet elite. But today he is something different. He is no longer just a revolutionary. He is a post-defeat realist. His message is simple but painful. Armenia cannot reverse geography. Armenia cannot build its future on dreams of revenge. It must accept the new regional reality and turn itself from a geopolitical dead end into a crossroads. That is why his government speaks about peace with Azerbaijan, normalization with Turkey, and opening transport routes across the region. His party, Civil Contract, presents this as a strategy of survival, not surrender. Survival. Pashinyan's idea is that Armenia can become truly sovereign only if it stops depending on Russia for every major decision. For the United States, this is the most important part of the election. If Pashinyan wins a strong mandate, Armenia will likely continue moving toward a peace agreement with Azerbaijan and deeper cooperation with the West. The hardest issue is peace with Azerbaijan. For decades, Armenian politics was built around Nagorno-Karabakh, but after Azerbaijan regained full control of the region in 2023, Armenia faced a reality that could no longer be avoided. Pashinyan recognized Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, including the former Nagorno-Karabakh region. That is why the peace process is so politically explosive. For Pashinyan, peace is the only way to protect Armenia's future. For his opponents, peace looks like capitulation. For Azerbaijan, peace must include clear recognition of borders and changes to Armenia's constitutional language. For the United States, peace means a chance to stabilize a region connecting Europe, Turkey, the Caspian Sea, and Central Asia. This is where the election becomes much bigger than Armenia. A peace agreement would not only end a conflict, it could open a new transportation corridor across the South Caucasus, and that corridor could weaken both Russia and Iran. Of the most important concepts in this story is TRIP. The Trump route for international peace and prosperity. The idea is to create a transport route connecting Azerbaijan with its Nakhchivan exclave through southern Armenia, and from there to Turkey and Europe. For Armenia, this could mean new trade, new infrastructure, and an end to isolation. For Azerbaijan and Turkey, it means direct connectivity. For the United States, it means something even bigger. It means a possible corridor from Central Asia to Europe that does not depend on Russia. This is why Washington, the United States, does not need to put troops in Armenia to influence the region. It can do it through diplomacy, infrastructure, investment, and peace architecture. If it works, America gains influence. Armenia gains economic oxygen. Azerbaijan gains connectivity. Turkey gains a regional bridge. Central Asia gains another route to the west, and Russia loses its ability to keep the South Caucasus frozen. Pashinyan's main opposition challenge comes from Samvel Karapetyan, and the strong Armenia bloc. Karapetyan is a Russian-Armenian billionaire with major business interests connected to Russia. His bloc represents a very different vision of Armenia's future. It does not necessarily say Armenia should cut all ties with the West, but its political instinct is clear: rebuild the relationship with Moscow, restore confidence through Russian-linked economic networks, and slow down risky geopolitical experiments. In simple terms, Karapetyan represents the old Armenian survival formula: money from Russia, security from Russia, caution toward Turkey, suspicion toward Western-designed corridors. For some Armenians, that sounds safe. For others, it sounds like walking back into the same trap. If strong Armenia performs well, it could weaken Pashinyan's mandate, slow the peace process, and give Moscow a new channel of influence inside Armenian politics. Another important player is Robert Kocharyan. Armenia's former president. Kocharyan belongs to the old political generation. His identity is tied to the Karabakh issue, the security establishment, and Armenia's long-standing alliance with Russia. If Pashinyan represents post-defeat realism, Kocharyan represents pre-2018 Armenia, security elites, Russian guarantees, and hardline thinking on Azerbaijan. For his supporters, he is experienced, tough, and patriotic. For his critics, he represents the past, a past that failed to prevent Armenia's military defeats and left the country dependent on Moscow. His camp is not simply asking voters to replace Pashinyan. It is asking them to reject the direction in which Pashinyan is taking the country. If forces like Kocharyan's gain influence, the peace process may not disappear overnight. But it could become slower, more fragile, and more vulnerable to Russian pressure. Russia is not just watching this election. Russia is applying pressure. Armenia still depends on Russia in key areas: trade, energy, migration, security, and infrastructure. This is classic Russian strategy. When Moscow cannot inspire loyalty, it uses dependency. When dependency is questioned, it uses punishment. When punishment fails, it uses political networks, propaganda, and fear. For the Kremlin, Armenia is not just another small country. It is a symbol. If Armenia can walk away from Russia after everything it has been through, then other post-Soviet countries may ask the same question: why should we stay dependent on Moscow? That is why Putin cannot afford to lose Armenia quietly. If Pashinyan wins with a strong majority, Armenia will likely continue moving toward peace with Azerbaijan, normalization with Turkey, and closer cooperation with the United States and Europe. Russia's monopoly over Armenia's foreign policy would weaken, but victory would not mean stability. Pashinyan would still face anger over the loss of Karabakh, pressure from old elites, resistance from the church, and Russian attempts to regain influence. So the real question is not only whether he wins, the real question is whether he can turn victory into durable peace. If the opposition wins, or becomes strong enough to block Pashinyan, the peace process slows down. The American-backed corridor becomes uncertain. Russia gets new leverage. Turkey becomes cautious. Azerbaijan may lose patience. And Armenia risks returning to isolation. Dependence and internal division. This is the scenario Moscow prefers. Russia does not need one specific candidate to win. It mainly needs paralysis. A divided Armenia is easier to influence. A frightened Armenia is easier to control. For the United States, Armenia's election is part of a larger strategic picture. Russia is weakened by the war in Ukraine. Iran is under pressure. Central Asia wants more routes to the world. Turkey is becoming a key regional connector. Azerbaijan is already an important energy and transport player. If Armenia normalizes relations with Azerbaijan and Turkey, the entire map changes. A route opens from Central Asia to Europe. Russia's control over regional logistics weakens. Iran's leverage is reduced, and the United States gains influence without occupation, strategy without war, and power through connectivity. That is why this election matters to Americans. Not because Armenia is big, but because its choice may unlock something big. So what is Armenia really voting on? Whether defeat becomes a prison or a turning point, whether Russia remains the referee of the South Caucasus, or a new regional order begins to emerge. For Armenia, it is about survival. For Russia, it is about holding on to a shrinking empire. For the United States, it is about whether diplomacy can open a corridor that war never could. Sometimes, great power politics is decided by a small country that finally chooses not to live in someone else's shadow.